You're tuned in to Shake, Rattle, and Goal, the official podcast of your Springfield Thunderbirds.
Osmanski, a one-timer deflected side of the goal. Alexandrov scores! Hosted
by Matt Baker and Steve Forney. A show that's everything Springfield hockey, with interviews including players, coaches, and staff.
The Springfield Indians repeat as the Calder Cup champions.
Listen to this podcast on all major streaming platforms and wherever you download podcasts.
In his first year at the helm, Kevin McDonald and Drew Bannister have the Teamers in the Calder Cup Finals.
Watch the podcast on the official Shake, Rattle, and Goal YouTube page at SRG Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Matt Baker and Steve Forney. And this episode number 34 of the Shake, Rattle, and Goal podcast is proudly brought to you by our friends at Landscaping That Fits. They are proudly serving the greater area. If you're in the listening area, they probably service you East Longmeadow, Agawam, Springfield, and the Wilbraham area. That's Landscaping That Fits, F-I-T-Z. Check them out on social media. They're all over Facebook as well. It's been a little while, but it's good to be back alongside Matt Baker. I'm Steve Forney. Matt, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Well, you know, I got my, like I was saying to you, Steve, my off-season office mode. But we're doing well. We're getting ready for the end of the season push here at school, and then kind of figuring out what we're going to do for this summer. How about you guys?
4 weeks left of school, and then I'm done. Yep. Yes, I can't wait. So a couple quick things off the top. If you're wondering what happened to White Lion and our good friends at YOLO, we just had them through the regular season. Landscaping That Fits wanted to keep going, so don't worry, they're not going anywhere. They're just taking a little breather, which is fine. The other question, where the heck have we been? I got to tell you, I mean, look, we kind of mentioned that once it turned into the off season, we would be cutting down a little bit just until there's stuff to talk about. But holy smokes, we can't even find the hour in the day. Yeah. I mean, but really between soccer, if you're looking for us, we're on a soccer field, a baseball field, lacrosse practice. We're at dance competitions. We are literally everywhere and don't have time to sit down for a minute. So finally, we're able to work it into our schedules. Much to the chagrin of our wives.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because in no way would I think about comparing, you know, what we have done for this podcast to, like, you know, game prep for actually playing hockey. But man, it's like it is an off-season breather. I mean, because you and I, we would read up and study and crunch some numbers and watch a lot of games during the regular season, and it was kind of nice to have this little 2-3 week, maybe. I don't even know how long it's been. It may be longer than that, but you know, where it's just, all right, let me catch up on some other stuff I got to do around the house and for school, and planning field day. That's always fun.
And we did have to sneak it in before the school year ends, because if you're wondering when I edit these episodes, it's during my prep period at school.
Yes, that's right.
Once it's summer vacation, I'm gonna run out of time. But don't tell my boss. But yeah, it's just there's just a boatload of stuff going on, and the nice thing now is that we do actually have a bunch of stuff to talk about. So if you are tuning in, this isn't just going to be, you know, jocularity for an hour. We actually have a lot of interesting things to talk about, and we might as well get right into it. Actually, we'll start with the top before we even get to the coaching changes here in Springfield. Congratulations to Drew Bannister, who is no longer the interim head coach of the St. Louis Blues. He is the full-time coach. Thoughts, Matt, on Drew Bannister being the full-time head coach for the St. Louis Blues?
Well deserved. I mean, talking to, you know, when we did the St. Louis Blues podcast, I was surprised to hear that they were still on the fence. I mean, I don't know what else you would want from an interim coach, a guy stepping in. You know, he knows the team. We know how many guys Drew Bannister has had the ability to work with while, you know, throughout his time in Springfield. So he obviously knew everybody. I mean, I had heard I was talking to my uncle about this, and he said, you know, well, let's see what happens if Carolina loses and Brind'Amour becomes available. You know, would St. Louis make a run at a Rod Brind'Amour? But, you know, they made the move to keep Bannister before the Carolina Hurricanes season had ended. I think it's good. I think it keeps continuity. It gives Bannister, you know, a full off season to create his roster and put his roster together and his lines together. It gives him an offseason with these guys that he already has a really good relationship with. So I think it's a good thing. And I think it's a very good thing for the Thunderbirds here in Springfield because, again, we need continuity at that parent level. You need some continuity. You need some stability in St. Louis for there to be stability and continuity here in Springfield. And, if you're bringing in a whole new regime, doesn't know any of these guys, has no ties to any of the young guys, who's to say a brand new coach is looking at Dean and Bolduc as just tradable assets because they're young and, who knows? I don't know. So I think it's a good thing for St. Louis. I think it's a very good thing for Springfield, and I wish him nothing but the best. Success in St. Louis means success down here in Springfield.
Yeah, no doubt. And to go off that, isn't it nice just having a guy up there who's been in this locker room and like with these players and knows the city and knows the environment? And, if the GM is wondering, well, is this a good prospect that would fit in Springfield? Nobody would know better than Drew Bannister.
Exactly.
So having a Springfield graduate really at the top position, besides the GM, really at the top position up in St. Louis, I think is great. I think that for them, again, I think the reason you were getting those answers from St. Louis is because it's not a name. And
agreed.
This is a problem across all sports. I mean, in football, how many jobs did Dave Wannstedt get? It's like, he's a terrible coach. Why does he have a job for 30 years? Dick Duran, who's hiring this guy? Like, you see it across all sports, these coaches that just, they're the name and they bounce around and bounce around and bounce around. Of course, I say that, Dallas is in the Dallas Stars are one game away from the Stanley Cup Finals. They got Peter DeBoer. The Rangers are one step away. They got, I think it's Peter Laviolette, who, again, I think has been on 15 teams. The guy, the evil mastermind in Florida, I can never remember his name, but I mean, again, another guy who's just been
Paul
around.
Maurice.
Paul Maurice.
I remember watching him when he was with the Whalers.
Yep.
He goes all the way back to the Whalers. And I remember Hartford Civic Center going to watch the Whalers play and Paul Maurice, the coach there. That's incredible. But and it's true, those retread coaches. And I actually believe Berube just got the job with Toronto Maple Leafs. So he's going to be up there. So, hockey is an interesting sport when it comes to their coaches because, I don't know how much I say this and we had our gripes with the coach here in Springfield. I don't know how much coaching matters, in a regular season. I think it matters a little bit more when you come to the playoffs and when you get to that crunch time.
I think
so, but yeah, we'll see. Like I said, overall,
I mean, I just think that there were issues with this team that, as you kept saying, that either they can't fix it or they're incapable of doing it. And to me, those are things that fall on the coaching staff. And,
agreed.
I think having a new set of eyes looking at this roster, I think is a good thing. I think, quite honestly, after, I'm not going to name names, but some of the players that I talked to had no faith in Dan Tkachuk as a head coach whatsoever. And so if you like your coach, maybe right, it doesn't really have much of an impact. If you don't like your coach, it has a huge impact because now you're like, well, I'm not playing for this guy, right? So, it's nice to see Chris Knobloch, former Hartford coach, going to the Western Conference Finals with Edmonton. The Bruins bring in Bruce Cassidy. He goes to Vegas and wins a cup. Now they have Jim Montgomery. The less retreads as years go by and as the game changes, the better the sport's going to be. And so I'm glad to see young coaches like Drew Bannister, Jim Montgomery, Chris Knobloch, and I say young just in their tenure.
Sure. Yeah.
It's nice to see them getting opportunities rather than just recycling Mike Yeo and all these same coaches that have just, John Tortorella, who again is going to get fired again probably, and who knows where he'll end up. So, so good for Drew Bannister. I'm really happy about that. And one thing that I was wondering, and I texted, it's not his fault. I texted Ryan kind of late, like as in like 20 minutes ago, and I haven't heard back from him. But I'm curious about whether Drew Bannister now has the ability to say, well, I like Dan Tkachuk as an assistant coach and bring him up and fire whoever was his assistant coach or the goalie coaches. Can he pluck coaches from Springfield and say, I like the, since you're getting a new administration anyway, why don't I pluck some of those guys that you're going to fire anyway?
And there's something to be said too. I mean, I don't want this to turn into like a Dan Kachuk bashing hour, but there are some guys, like, being a head coach is a lot different than being an assistant coach. And, the extra responsibilities, the extra management that goes into being a head coach. Some people just aren't the easiest example I can give is I know it's a different sport, but in the NFL, right? Like, offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators, really smart at what they do, really understand the nuances of their side of the football. And then when it comes to being a head coach, they can't manage a game. They don't know when to call a time. They don't know how to,
locker room.
when
They
to
can't
sub
manage that
different
either.
packages in. Exactly. How to manage a locker room and all of that has nothing to do with their knowledge of a game. And so, when we get into our new coach here in a little bit here in Springfield, I think he comes with a good background of all different levels of playing and at the coaching level as well.
Yeah, well, I don't see why we don't just hop right into it. The new head coach here in Springfield, a name that as soon as I heard, I remembered him playing for the Washington Capitals, is Steve Konowalchuk, a guy who was with the Colorado Eagles last year, has had a phenomenal WHL career as a head coach with the Seattle Thunderbirds, go figure. But a guy that I really like. We're talking again about young coaches. Here's a younger coach, right? And I think it's a great hire.
I think it's wonderful. I think, not knowing him personally, not looking at the style of play that he was a part of when he was in the WHL as a head coach. But if you look at his body of work, he's a player he's a guy who's going to come to the locker room with experience. Plenty of NHL games under his belt, 790 NHL games. So plenty of game experience to bring to the table. If you look at his playing career, spent time in the WHL, the AHL, the NHL, back to the WHL, AHL, NHL, so he's a guy who understands the ups and downs of a season. He's the guy who understands a call up. He understands the, going down. And so then you look at his coaching career, and he does have experience with the Avalanche as an assistant coach, the head coach for like you mentioned earlier, the Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL. This is a mouthful. He's won a championship in 16-17 with the Seattle Thunderbirds. After that championship, headed back up to the NHL with the Ducks as an assistant coach. Had 2 years back with the Red Deer Rebels. I wasn't kidding about this mouthful. Head coach 2 years, and then this year as an associate head coach with the Colorado Eagles. You look, though, also at his, we'll call it minor league, or the WHL coaching experience. He's in the playoffs more than he isn't. In fact, all but 1 year, he's in the playoffs. So he's going to have high expectations. We know the city will have high expectations. And so I think he's not just going to be a guy who is, talking the talk, so to speak. He's walked it already with his experience in both AHL and NHL, coaching up and down the ranks. So I think this is a great hire. I think it checks all of the, the boxes you would want checked heading into this. Again, I don't know the guy. Haven't talked to him yet. Hopefully we can talk to him soon.
Yeah.
But checks all the boxes you would kind of want checked. Experience, cred, like he's been there, done that in both as a player and as a coach. So, I'm excited for it. I think it's a good hire. And I'm sure, Bannister is a part of it to an extent. And, they're going to run a similar style set. Their offense, they're going to run the same style offense. Bannister is going to want the young guys, the prospects, playing his style of hockey. And so I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a real interesting thing too. And it's a great question to ask him is, has he and Drew talked about that, having the same approach to, game style and management. And again, was Drew Bannister sort of invited into that conversation by whoever was hiring, as in like, what do you want? What are you looking for the style of play out of your, out of the minor league coach? Yeah, he was the first ever Utah native to play in the NHL. 8 years in the WHL. This is a tweet from Ryan Smith. He says, when Steve Konowalchuk won the 2017 WHL title with Seattle, he had some pretty well-known NHL and AHL names. Alexander True, who is currently with the Charlotte Checkers, I believe. Keegan Colasar, who's with the Vegas Knights. Ethan Bear, who I believe is with Edmonton. Austin Strand, who I'm not really familiar with, but also some guy named Matthew Barzell. So, you don't get just because you got the talent doesn't mean you can go ahead and win. I mean, look, the WHL, all these players in the NHL come from somewhere. A lot of them come from Canadian major juniors. So I'm sure that league was stacked. I'm sure there was a bunch of Matthew Barzells all over those rosters, and it takes more than just having the names. So clearly he's doing something right. So, I think this is a great move. Like I said, I'm really curious to see what the coaching staff ends up rounding into. And even the, we look at at the end of last year when you had guys like Glenn Wesley on the bench, you had, the player development coaches like, the guy with the ponytail, I'm blanking on his name, Chris Thorburn. What other kind of changes are going to be made in sort of that realm of St. Louis Blues? I think this is a unique situation. I don't know how many. I mean, I guess the Bruins did it with Drew Bannister. He was the coach. Oh my God, Bruce Cassidy, because he was in Providence. They fired Claude Julien. They brought up the kid from Providence to coach. So I guess it does happen sometimes, but I'm just wondering what other kind of institutional changes get made when it comes to assistant coaches, development coaches, goalie coaches, video coaches. What that all change looks like. So it'll be interesting to follow over the next little bit.
Yeah, the only real information I can kind of find on this, according to the Springfield Thunderbirds website, Steve Konowalchuk is listed as the head coach. They don't have any sort of associate head coach or assistant coach listed yet. Dan Stewart is, and I believe you would mention this too, was the goaltending coach last year. According to their website, he remains. Their head athletic trainer, Lava Mornier. I know I butchered that. But I think he remains. So it looks like, this is going to be a mix of, retaining some staff, coaching staff, but also giving Konowalchuk the opportunity to kind of the guys closest to him. He can pick his guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, we'll see how it all shakes out in the next little bit. Obviously, plenty of time for him to work in whatever it is he's looking for. And again, maybe he is working closely with somebody like Drew Bannister on that kind of stuff. I will say it feels like it's been a while because we can't even get the words out of our mouth today. I don't know.
I'm a bit.
We're a little rusty, I think, today.
A long day in the sun, soccer practices right after school. I'm ready for bed.
The lawn mowed. Oh, yeah. No, it's been a day. The burgers and dogs have already been grilled and consumed. Moving ahead a little bit, just looking at the roster, we do know that Matthew Pekka has already been re-signed. Sam Bitten's been re-signed. We're hoping to get word that Will Bitten will be re-signed soon. And I got to assume from his perspective, he'd love to be back. I guess it's up to the team now to make that call. I don't know why a guy like Drew Bannister wouldn't want a guy like that in the system, but that's obviously up to him. But the big one that I saw that I loved, and so did my daughter because it's her favorite player, is Hugh McGing back on a 2-year deal. I just think a guy that you can literally put anywhere in the roster, top to bottom, great in the locker room, kills penalties, plays power play, just can kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think that's huge. That's big. I mean, you look at now when we start talking about the prospects in a minute, guys like Matthew Pekka, Hugh McGing, it's almost odd to say, like, these are your now AHL veteran presences. These are the guys who will look to lead by example. leftover, sort of, not leftover in a bad way, but remaining on this roster from that Calder Cup run, guys who have winning experience, guys who have that winning pedigree inside them. So I am hopeful, fingers crossed, Will is next on that list. I don't think, if we're being realistic, Sam is probably still a fourth line guy who's got his role. Hopefully that becomes a little bit more consistent, I think, for the fan base. I think we'd love to see that a little bit more with Sam, but he's going to be a fourth line guy and playing his role. But I think you look at who we're probably losing, guys like Kessel, the young guys, both the two Zachs, I would expect them to be up. So who's filling that veteran presence role, that leadership role? We know we've got Pekka and McGing there, but we're going to need some other guys as well. And hopefully Will fits that mold.
I mean, and two other guys that we lucked into that are definitely not going to be around are Ryan Suzuki and Dylan Coughlin.
Yeah.
So, and those are, I mean, I think Suzuki's maybe 24, but like good player, like real good, solid player you can put in the middle of your roster. So, the old savvy veteran with the gray beard, Hugh McGing, all of 25 years old.
Yeah, you're right. Yes,
season starts. But no, you're right, though. I mean, I think that it doesn't matter how many years you play it, really at any level in any sport. You get to the championship level, you go through the grind of playoffs, whether it's pick your sport. It's really not about the age anymore. It's really not. And this is a player that I think is great for the locker room. I wouldn't be surprised if he had an A on his jersey next year. He had 22, 23, he had 39 points in 71 games. Last season, he had 39 points in 51 games. So he had the same amount of points in 20 less games. So clearly he's on the right track. And I think the year before that, he had like 31 points. So every year has gotten progressively better for him. Obviously, he was a little injury, the little snake bite of the injuries this past season. But I just think one of those guys that is not only great on the ice and great in the locker room, but he's marketable. I mean, those posters you see, and you get off the Long Meadow exit off 91, and you're driving by Forest Park. There's the Thunderbirds poster. There's Hugh McGing doing the fist pumps, right? So this is a guy that's marketable. He's familiar to the fan base. Even if you only came to one or two games, you'd recognize his face, recognize his name. That he's a guy who puts butts in seats, and so I think he does, like you said, check a lot of those boxes.
Yeah.
So happy to have you. Number 11. Keep him on the list. Now, and before we go any further, we are going to take a look at some of the new names, which there will be here on the Springfield roster. But we do want to, one more time, thank our friends from Landscaping That Fits. You can unlock the secret to a lush, weed-free lawn with Landscaping That Fits' exclusive weed and feed lawn service program, serving the East Longmeadow, Agawam, Springfield, and Wilbraham area. Their program is designed to elevate your outdoor space to new heights of beauty and health. I will say I have them putting down the weed and feed on my lawn, and it's growing, man. It is green, lush, thick. Like I said, I mowed the front again tonight just because it'll look good, and now it looks even better. So you can experience the difference that I experienced as their expert team nourishes your lawn with premium nutrients, promoting robust growth while eliminating unsightly weeds. Say goodbye to tedious weed pulling and hello to a vibrant, envy-inducing lawn. Let Landscaping That Fits handle the hard work while you relax and enjoy the stunning results. Call them today, 413-847-0338 to secure your spot in their exclusive weed and feed lawn service program, or you can go online to landscapingthatfits.com. That's Fitz, as Rob Fitzpatrick is the guy over there you want to talk to. Don't forget, they also offer a variety of additional services. Weekly mowing. If you're just tired of mowing, call them. They'll come over and do it. Mosquito and tick control treatments. Fall cleanup when that time comes, aeration, overseeding, all those things. Landscaping That Fits will do it. Your lawn deserves nothing less than Landscaping That Fits. And again, Rob's a big time Thunderbirds fan. So you're talking to, you're hearing it from a guy who's actually getting that service done in myself. So big thank you to those guys for helping me out. Because again, I hate putting down fertilizer.
It's almost time too to start doing the grubs. That's something you can give Fitz a call there, because now's getting close to the point where you want to start laying that grub killer down. I know that's something that I'll be doing soon, because they kill my lawn by the end of the summer.
And so, and every price is different based on your. I don't. Here we go. This guy's definitely getting his money's worth. I walked into, I think it was Home Depot, and I saw the price of fertilizer. I'm like, geez, like, I mean, no one, like, when you go through Rob, you're not paying for the, it's booked into the price, the cost of the fertilizer. And I'm like, thank God I signed up with him because these fertilizing prices are just absurd. So, yeah, save the work, save the labor, give Rob a call. We are going to talk a little bit now about some of the new faces that we'll see. And I think we've been calling this the Swedish invasion.
Yes.
We are looking at 5 new players, all Swedish. I think we have that right.
Mm-hmm.
But we will start with a guy that I think is pretty highly touted in Otto Stenberg. He was a draft pick of your St. Louis Blues. He's signed to a 3-year entry-level contract. He was the first round number 25 overall pick in the 2023 NHL draft. He's in 31 regular season games for Frölunda of the Swedish Hockey League, 6 points, 8 penalty minutes. He's from Sweden, obviously. He also posted 9 points in 7 tournament games at the 2024 U20 World Junior Championship, led Team Sweden to the silver medal. So here's another guy who's got a lot of talent, a lot of buzz, and will probably start the season right here in Springfield.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these guys are all that we're going to be talking about they're Blues prospects. So I think it's safe to say they're going to be at least, starting, trending on the Thunderbirds roster, and where that ends up after a little while, I'm not exactly sure. But you look at a guy like we've got Stenberg, we've got Theo Lindstein, another young guy. My computer's slow to load with all these tabs open right now.
Mine too. I'm trying to do the same thing, trying to keep on top of it.
I got all these Swedish-born players loading up on my computer here.
Wait till the ads we start getting after doing all these Google searches. You're like, want to win a trip to Sweden? Like, no.
Yeah, we might as well. But no, I mean, look, I think it's all good stuff. These are young players with entry-level deals coming in. So this is where they fit here in Springfield. And I think, we're going to have to get used to the names: Otto Stenberg, Theo Lindstein. Who else we got? Marcus Silvegaard.
Nailed it.
I'm good at this. I'm getting better. Simon Robertson, Samuel Johansson. These are the new guys. We've heard about Dvorsky. I'm not exactly sure where he's slated to be yet. It sounds like he'll probably be. I think he's going to be more of like a Blues guy, kind of maybe going back and forth a little bit. Snuggerud, we know he's staying down in Minnesota. So really, we've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 young Swedes who are going to be playing here in 4-1-3 this year. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and again, Stenberg is 18. He'll be actually his birthday's right around the corner, so he'll be 19 when the season starts. Lindstein will be 19 when the season starts. Robertson will be 22 when the season 21 when the season starts. The only one that's kind of been around the block is this Marcus Silvegaard, who is actually 25. But even last year with a team in Sweden that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, 41 games. 41 points in 51 games, 3 points in 8 playoff games, and plus 10 penalty minutes. So, he kind of fits that, 6 foot 190. He kind of fits that AHL sort of build and size and skill. And I assume can play a little bit of, actually, here we go. So there's a write-up in Hockey DB. I just read this quick. He is a flashy player who stands out with his great speed and physicality, owns a terrific shot, isn't afraid to show emotions on the ice, lacks a bit of a routine to control himself whenever the game heats up a little bit. Beautiful.
Oh, boy.
Now that's an AHL player.
Fast,
physical,
is AHL.
And can't control his emotions. Perfect. That's just what we're looking for. So, I think it'll be interesting. I'm trying to think. I think the only was Calle Rosen the only Swedish guy?
I believe
on
so.
The team?
Yeah.
I think so. But, Yeah, I think this would be fun. I think if anything else, they say that transition from European hockey to American hockey is really hard because the ice is so much bigger out there.
Yeah.
They're playing on smaller ice. They're playing against grown men. They're playing against guys who know that the NHL is just a phone call away and will do anything that it takes to get there. And there's a lot of growing pains. And when you're moving far away from home at the age of 19, you're all alone and you got to make your own friends. And now there's sort of a group of them that can all learn together. They can all hang out together. They can all talk Swedish together and eat meatballs together and do whatever kind of things that they have each other. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes,
they're not just all by themselves at 19 in a faraway country in something called Springfield, Mass. So I kind of like
Simon.
That.
Well, I was just going to say Simon Robertson, 21 years, and Sam Johansson at 23. So they're all young, they're hungry, all coming from, I can't pronounce some of these teams, but all coming from the Swedish league, and all playing minutes there, all playing. Sam Johansson, 43 games this past year in for his team in Sweden. So these are guys who are hungry and looking to make a name for themselves. And I would imagine it'll be again. Maybe it's just a preseason look, but Springfield is probably where it's going to be as of right now. That's my kind of guess.
Yeah, I would think if you're St. Louis, you don't even let them sniff. I mean, they have so much cap. They don't have much cap relief anyway, but you do still have. If you're going to keep Dean and Bolduc, and even Kessel, those are smaller deals. So like you actually have. You have young players filling those roles of, cheap options that are going to stick. It's like, the Bruins are going to keep Justin Brazeau up because why wouldn't they? He's making $770,000. Like, keep him up. But it's interesting too. Johansson is a defenseman. Lindstein is a defenseman. Stenberg, Silvegaard and Robertson are all forwards. In fact, Stenberg's a center, Silvegaard is a left wing, Robertson's a right wing. So you might just see a whole line. Put all three of them on a line together and see what happens. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that all shakes out, but it'll be nice to have them.
It will. And if we can play, do you want to play a little bit of what we think might happen with our roster, the turnover?
Sure.
This hurts me a little bit to say, but looking at sort of our roster that we had last year, there definitely are some names that I think are on the bubble, as much as it might hurt us to say this. But Adam Gaudette is an interesting one to me. We cannot deny the amazing season he had this year. And when he basically was the only one on the ice producing, he still produced, right? But he's an interesting fit for me with a lot of these young prospects up there. So I don't know. I don't want to speculate what we do with Gaudette. We know he can play here at the AHL level. I'm just not sure what the Blues are going to want to do with that. Does he become sort of like just that AHL veteran guy like a Pekka, McGing, Will Bitton, Gaudette? And is that just sort of where his role gets relegated to? I think Mikhail Abramov is a guy you'd like to see stay. I think he really got off to maybe a slow start, but came on strong at the end of the season. I would expect him to stay. Now I think you're looking at guys like Laffy, Washkrick. Obviously, you've already touched upon Suzuki. I think Drew Callen, Vrana. I think those are the names that you probably don't see next year. From the forwards, what are your thoughts on those guys?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think even so, looking at it from the value perspective of like, so they got Gaudette and Abramov in that trade with Ryan O'Reilly. With Toronto. Those are guys that they're gonna want to keep, because if you tell your fan base, oh yeah, we traded Ryan O'Reilly, our franchise center, and oh by the way, the two guys that we traded him for, we're just gonna let walk for free because they're not working out. Like that's not a good look. Again, as long as their fans are as passionate about as Boston fans, because that's what people in Boston would say. What do you mean? What do you mean it's not working out? Try again. So I think you're more likely to see those kind of guys stay than the guys that they don't really have much commitment to, like you mentioned, Drew Callen, Washcrack, Laffy. Yeah, I mean, there's no real investment there. Yeah, so I think they're more likely to keep the guys that they either signed or traded for. I do think Verana will not come back. I wouldn't be surprised if they let Callie Rosen walk. Duzak's an interesting one. I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but that's one of those guys that I think, again, talk about putting butts in seats. I could watch that. I want that guy in my team every day out of the week. So
the only thing, though, I believe you're only allowed so many like AHL deals. And so right now, I believe you've got Pekka and Sam Bitten are on AHL deals. So I don't believe like when it comes like the waiver stuff or pulling a guy up, they are on an AHL contract. And Duzak was on an AHL contract this year. So I don't know how that fits in, but for a guy who I enjoyed talking to him, I enjoyed interacting with him, very personable guy, enjoyed watching him play. I can't say it enough how much I appreciate a guy like Duzak who is willing to play forward when that's not sort of his natural position, but this is what the team needs. I mean, I can't say enough about a guy like that, but I would be worried, again, looking at sort of the roster from a defensive standpoint. We just mentioned the Swedes who play defense. Loof isn't going anywhere.
Oh, yeah, he's Swedish.
Yeah.
There's the other guy.
He's not going anywhere. I look at guys like Callie Rosen, even a veteran Swede, but I wonder if his time is done here in Springfield. You got Wyatt Kalynuk, Hunter Skinner. I don't think you'd see both of them stay.
Yeah, it's probably one or the other.
It's one or the other.
Love me some Hunter Skinner. Bring that guy back.
You know what? I
love me some Hunter Skinner.
That's where I'm at. I really like Hunter Skinner. I like how he plays. A little bit bigger of a body, 6'3", 205 compared to Kalynuk.
He's still a kid 6'1". Too.
Yeah, and he's 4 years younger than Wyatt Kalynuk. So, I don't know. There's a lot of moves to be made. And the Blues still have the draft coming up, so we'll see what happens there. And you could expect, let's not forget guys like Nikita Alexandrov and Tyler Tucker, who really kind of lost their way a little bit in the NHL this year. And that's not to say any of these names can't be traded or moved to another team. We're having this conversation assuming that they're sticking with the Blues organization.
Right.
So much can change, and we have no insight as to what the Blues are thinking or doing. But, I think this roster is going to turn over a little bit more than it has in the past.
Agreed.
And maybe that's not a bad thing, given the fact that we missed the playoffs this year.
Yeah. And you're getting a fresh head coach.
Yeah.
So you kind of can clean the slate a little bit. The coach and the new players don't necessarily know. Look, I think there was something going on in the locker room last year. I think.
Agreed.
I don't think you could play that poorly down the stretch without there being something. And I do know from a player or at least a couple that were not thrilled with the way that the coaching situation was handled. Not they handled the way that the coaches handled the game plans in the locker room. And so,
sure.
I think for some of those guys, whether they're here or not, it'll be a fresh start. But again, you got a new guy coming in with his own style and attitude. And I think that's refreshing for the whole locker room. One other guy that we have to keep in mind, who's just, what's going to happen is Mackenzie McEachern and what's his, status. When's he going to be ready to play? What's his deal? Is he, because I believe he was on an NHL deal and cleared waivers and all that. So, that's another name to keep an eye on, but that's a guy who I would love. I mean, look, you got a couple of young, smaller sized Swedes. Look, they don't exactly play physically out there in that part of the world. You put him on a line with Mackenzie McEachern, they won't have to play physical because they can just let him do it.
He'll do it.
So, so that would be nice for him too. But it'll be interesting to see. And I like you said, I don't think a change would be a bad thing. Keep the captain. Keep some of your core players, and then you're going to have to rearrange the pie chart a little bit. But
look, as a Giants fan, I'm used to that, and that's what gives us hope, right? That's a new regime, new players, it didn't work last year. You can't if you stick with the same old. That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing, repeating the same thing, and expecting a different result. So I would, like I said, I would expect to see more turnover than we have in the past few years. And it makes sense. I mean, you're not going to try to destroy or disrupt a Calder Cup championship run. And now that has sort of faded away to now we didn't make the playoffs this year. So you've got to change it up. And so that shows us that the front office wants to put winning product on the ice. They want to keep that winning expectation with the fan base. And those are all great things to have. Those are all great. Doesn't guarantee anything, but those are all great ways to have an organization run, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm curious too. It's funny. I'm just trying to find a little bit more about that. I was seeing if I could find a mock draft already for the upcoming, NHL draft, and it's
Sure.
I guess it's either too early or nobody cares. But I wouldn't be. What if St. Louis really because all these guys you mentioned, all these young prospects, you could throw Bolduc and Perunovic and Dean in there. They're picking at 16 in the draft, which is June 28th and the 29th at the Sphere in Vegas, which I watch my two favorite bands on the planet play there. And I'm like, I can't believe I didn't go to Vegas, but it's because I would die and never make it home.
Never come home.
You flip the 16th pick and one of these top prospects and get yourself in the top 10 in the draft.
Yeah.
Why not? If you're St. Louis, if there's a guy there you really like. So, it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out next month. We're about a month away from it. So we'll see. A couple other quick things, Matt. I don't know if you wanted to get into any of these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Calder Cup playoffs, just taking a look at it on our side of the playoff tree. It's down to just Hartford and Hershey. I know we were both really high on Providence, who battled really hard against Hartford. Hartford won the series on a really fluky goal that beat Brandon Bussey.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's any real surprise, even still looking at what this looks like from the AHL side of Calder Cup side of things.
Crazy how it's just kind of working into the same situation it was last year here in the Atlantic Division with Hartford and Hershey again. Hartford was an interesting team. I think they started the season so hot, Matt Rempe gets called up and a few other guys, and they kind of were struggling alongside us here in Springfield, but they picked it up towards the end of the season and are playing good hockey when it matters. So they're down 2-0 now to Hershey, though. I guess the writing's on the wall. Also in the Eastern.
Well, I was just going to say real quick on that too.
Yep.
You get the Rangers, their parent club, still in it, and they're in the conference finals, and they are still calling up guys. I mean, they called up Louis Domingue, and they're so to get this far while your parent club is still also alive and calling up your players, that's impressive. That's pretty impressive. So tip of the hat to our neighbors down south on 91 South.
And look, I mean, credit where credit is due. Don't forget, we touched upon this. Knobloch gets called up. They're doing it with their coach called up.
Yep.
Right. So, it kind of makes us look even worse here in Springfield. We couldn't get our act together when it happened. It clearly can be done because look at Hartford.
Right.
But you've got Cleveland and Syracuse in the North Division finals right now. Cleveland's up 2-0 there. On the Western side of things, Milwaukee and Grand Rapid, the Grand Rapid Griffins, they're tied 1-1. And Coachella Valley is up 3-0 against Ontario, the Ontario Reign over there. So I think, things are kind of maybe trending towards a little bit of a repeat. Coachella Valley, maybe, and Hershey, not to get ahead of ourselves here, but, maybe a little run back with those two.
Is that good or bad for the league, do you think, Matt? To have the same two teams back-to-back years?
That's an interesting question. I think the dynamics of the AHL, you probably would want to have new faces, new teams in there. I don't know what is that saying if you can have two teams sort of have these two dominant back-to-back seasons. What does That's an interesting question, Steve. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer, but I would think that if you have these, I think 2 years is 2 years max.
Yeah.
Like you get these dynasties, like there were years in the NHL where it was Pittsburgh against Detroit every single year in the finals. And eventually people were just like, I don't want to, I'm tired of these two teams. Like I want to see something new. I think 2 years is max for the exact same two teams. You know, from a fan base perspective, I mean, it's good for Coachella Valley, who's a brand new team, and you're trying to develop, and you know, and Hershey. I think, I mean, I'm kind of getting sick of Hershey. Like, you guys have been really good for like 35 years. Can you just chill? Like, can you just let somebody else have a turn?
Especially, it's interesting though. I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad, if those are the right terms to use, but it shouldn't happen in the AHL where there is so much turnover, where you are basically a team every year with a different identity, a different makeup of personalities in a locker room, guys called up, sent down. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you're really good, if you're playing really good, you get called up and you're not in the AHL anymore. So to have these teams, you know, I think from a league standpoint, you probably, you know, also look at the you know, the fan base. You know, Hershey's not the most marketable area, Hershey, Pennsylvania. I don't know much about the desert, but I would imagine those two areas, you're not bringing in AHL fans to come spend a long weekend in Hershey, Pennsylvania to watch a game. So it's probably, you know, tough from that marketing standpoint. But
and you know, from a team perspective, it's more impressive the more I think about it. You know, 10 years ago, Hershey wasn't playing against, they didn't have to go play against the Grand Rapids and Coachella Valley, and they kept it on the East Coast, but they had to go up to St. John's, Newfoundland, you know, and there wasn't a team in Charlotte. And so, like, it's even more impressive, you know, with the roster change, but the affiliation changes and the city changes and all these different, the division gets realigned. It's like all these things keep changing, and yet the consistency of Hershey being in it literally every single year is the one thing that never changes. It's like the most constant. I mean, that's crazy. So tip of the hat to Hershey, I guess. Now I've tipped the hat to Hartford and Hershey. Gross.
Hey, how about Hofer playing in the Worlds? You got Joel Hofer and Bennington, two goalies for Canada. Kessel playing for Team USA. Good stuff.
Team Canada. I'm not about to tip my hat to Canada. I draw the line there, but no. They had a nice big comeback win. Team Canada did against Chechnya, I believe. Is that what they call it now? Chechnya, right? I believe Hofer was in goal for that one, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, it is kind of cool to see. I don't ever remember a time where an international team, Olympics or World Juniors, was like, yeah, you got one good goalie, but you got two good goalies. We'll take them both. Like, that's impressive.
It is pretty cool. And glad to see Kessel making it to Team USA. Yeah, to be honest, we gave Kessel a lot of slack, if that's the right word for it.
I think it's flack.
There you go. Not enough slack, maybe.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the year, and look, I personally rightfully deserved. He would make those kind of silly bonehead mistakes that turned out to be very costly. He eliminates them this year. I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. He deserves all this. And you know, the few times I got to see him, I watched the Blues play on TV and watched him play. He played well. When he came back down to Springfield, he was a whole nother guy. Those few games he played with us, physical, aggressive, finishing checks, being more assertive with the puck. So good for Kessel. I think he's finally developed into what the Blues thought he could be. So good for him. That's great for him.
Yeah. And the only other thing we have on the agenda is former Thunderbird Austin Osmanski going overseas and playing, I believe, Swedish League. I feel like this whole episode's been about,
because why not?
I believe it's the SHL. So, you know, and there's a guy who was a good dude. Every time I ran into him, he was a good dude. Obviously, got traded at the deadline, but I think we kind of all knew, with all due respect, he wasn't really exactly AHL caliber. But he had a nice little stint here, and he had scored a couple big goals in big games, and was a nice little player. So tip of the hat and good luck to him.
Good
going
luck
and
to him.
Playing overseas. Yeah. It's going to be a bigger ice, big guy. So you got to move a little quicker.
One other side note we have here on our notes, and I think it's good to mention, the Wolves, Chicago Wolves, are back with Carolina. So I don't know. Like, can you picture, like, you know, the two brothers in the room being yelled at by the dad? Listen, you two, work it out, figure it out. Your partners, deal with it. You know, like, that's how I picture the league, the NHL, talking to Carolina and the Wolves, because that was a disaster last year from everybody. Nobody wants that to happen. You got players playing all over the place.
Yeah, no, I look at it as a happy couple for 2 years, and then they have the world's worst breakup, and then a year later they're like, "All right, you want to get back?"
It wasn't that bad.
You want to get back together? I miss you.
Yeah. You don't know what you got till it's gone.
Yeah, but I think that's good news.
Playing in the background.
That's good news for Springfield, because you know our affiliation deal with St. Louis ends at the end of this season, and the less available AHL markets there are, if you don't have a dance partner, you can't dance. You know, right? So like, let's keep that. Let's make sure every city has an affiliate, so that when it comes down to the table, they say, okay, Springfield's our spot. And I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, even just with the Drew Bannister hire, clearly that's just another feather in the cap to Springfield. Like, we know what we're doing here. Half your roster Springfield guys. Your head coach is a Springfield guy. Like, you know.
Yep.
So that's good. I think that's a good sign for us too.
Agreed. I think it's, you know, we talked about it when we talked with our buddy Patrick Williams during the season. I don't think it's good to have a team without an AHL affiliate. It's not good for the Chicago Wolves. I don't think it's good for the AHL league when you have one division basically playing with no prospects from a team, because all your prospects are playing in Springfield and all over the place.
Right.
So I think it's a good thing, and I agree with you. Whereas, you know, what you don't want is for your AHL team bouncing all around affiliates, because again, there's no continuity, there's no system grooming, there's no sense of security, and I think the Thunderbirds have a good thing right now with St. Louis. So keep that rolling as long as we can.
The only thing I want is the Charlotte Checkers. I want Florida and Charlotte. Change the jersey, Charlotte Checkers. You're no longer Carolina property. You don't need to look like them. Change the color scheme. Look like the Florida Panthers, not like the Carolina Hurricanes. It drives me nuts. Like, I can't wrap my head around. Maybe it's because we were with Florida, but I can't wrap my head around the Charlotte Checkers not being the Carolina affiliate, because of the way they look.
They look just like them.
If it looks like a hurricane and it smells like a hurricane and it's in the same state as the hurricane, but it's not the hurricane. It just change it up a little bit.
Call Steve. Let him design your new jersey.
That's right. I got some students.
Spare no expense and get it done. That's what we do.
I might assign that list this week to a couple students. Just change it up a little bit for the team. Send it down there. So, well, this was a lot of fun, Matt. I'm glad we were able to get back to doing this. I honestly missed this. It's good to be back. We want to thank our friends at Landscaping That Fits for sponsoring, proudly serving the East Longmeadow, Agawam, Springfield, and Wilbraham locations. They're at landscapingthatfits.com. Fits with a Z, as in Fitzpatrick. And this was great, Matt. I'm sure I'll see you Thursday night. Our kids at baseball practice.
I see you at the baseball field. Yes, no, this was fun, and you know, we will do our best. We can't really hop on and do an episode every time some little news changes, but we'll probably try to get one in maybe after the draft a little bit, and then there's the free agency period and all that stuff, and we will keep you up to date, up to speed with some of the big news, and we look forward to talking to you again. So thanks for listening. Thanks for the clicks. It's the off season, but let's go T-Birds.